Hey there, my name is Matt Wilhelmi, and I am the owner of Strategic Voyages Business Consultants. I'm also the author of Taboo Business Questions, What's Haunting Every Entrepreneur's Growth. And today I'm joined by Raquel Castillo. She is a fractional integrator for companies running on EOS, building systems, processes, and people. Thanks for joining me today, Raquel.
Thanks, Matt, for having me.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to today's conversation. We've got a really great case study we'll talk about here in just a second. But first, I'd really love to find out a little bit about your background. I think the integrator role, for people that aren't familiar, is part of the EOS platform, and maybe people don't even know what that means. So could you give us a little background on maybe how you got into the integrator role? What is this EOS thing that some people have probably heard of, and how did you kind of get into it?
Yeah, great question, Matt. EOS is something that I found about 3 years ago, but I want to start a little before then. So I've always been a type of person that is what I like to call a mediator. With whether it's family or friends or in business, I've always been a mediator, bringing peace to people, other people. And so when I found EOS, which for those who are listening who don't know what EOS stands for, it's the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And it was amazing. Rocket Fuel talks about the visionary, the integrator. For those that are like, what is that? It's usually the CEO and a COO combination duo there. So visionary, integrator, CEO, COO, those terms are kind of one and the same. And but yeah, I found it 3 years ago. I was on with the manufacturing company. I actually came in after I graduated with my master's during COVID, not thinking I would land a job during that crazy time, and found this manufacturing company who had a great product and went in to help with their branding and realized that their systems and processes were everywhere. They had no structure. They had a marketing and a sales team and no operations, no inventory. People were coming and going whenever they wanted, and it was honestly chaos. So I asked the owner, hey, I have some business acumen. If you need help, let me know. And he happened to read the book Traction and said, can you implement this? And then we self-implemented EOS into the company. And within 18, I was employee number 6, and within 18 months, we grew the company to about 30 employees, had structure, had departments. We went to having no departments to having a finance department, an HR department, operations, sales, everything kind of structured. And so, yeah, now that's what I do fractionally for companies. I help them build their systems, operations, and people.
Wow, there's a lot there. So, Raquel, just to make sure I'm on the same page, Traction, it's this book written by Gino Wickman. I think you mentioned that. And it really gives companies like a platform to use all of the same words, right? I'm familiar with EOS because I've read the book Traction. I've done some integrator work as well, but I've noticed that it really gets everybody on the same page, moving in the same direction at the same speed. Everybody's working together when they're using the same language. And a big component of Traction, and this is where I would love for you to just elaborate a little bit, is these leadership meetings. These L10 meetings is what I think they're called in Traction. And they're supposed to be every single week, the same format, very structured. There's a stop time, there's a start time. And that's what the integrator does, right? They get everybody together to look at their scorecard, to look at different accomplishments throughout the week and different tasks. But from your perspective, being that integrator now fractionally, how does that work? Do you kind of come in for one day and do these leadership meetings in the one day, and do people, are they as receptive as maybe they were when you were there full time? I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, great question, Matt. I can only speak from my experiences. There's different fractionals do it different ways. I know some fractionals who will say, hey, you have me on just Tuesdays. And so then they'll have all their meetings on Tuesdays where they go through the L10, they have their one-on-ones with their direct reports, and kind of just have everything in one day. I like to structure it where we have an L10, yes, the same week, the same time, every week. And then kind of having one-on-ones throughout the week where I'm available to them if they need anything. And really in those L10s, you get to-dos or, task for the next week. And so throughout the week, I'm checking in on employees and direct reports saying, hey, is there anything that you need from me to make sure that your to-do is done by the next time we meet? So really that pulse of accountability. And it's some may look at it as micromanagement, but until they really understand the structure, it's to help them be accountable to the team.
Yeah, accountability is a big word that's used in the
Yeah.
traction world
Yeah.
because you have to have accountability to get stuff done, right?
Yeah.
And I'm really happy that we're talking today, Raquel, because this case study that we've been emailing about and kind of talking about is one that has a lot to do with traction. I didn't actually know that when I was introduced to them. A mutual contact of mine actually introduced me to the owner of this Texas-based software development company and said, hey, Matt, they do have a CFO, but we're not really sure he knows what he's doing. And he knew that I wear the CFO hat in some of my clients' companies. And for people that don't know, that's the fractional, that's the chief finance officer. And as the CFO, he wasn't really doing a lot of the CFO things. He was doing more of, in my opinion, controller tasks. And again, I'm not trying to get too technical, but if you're the CFO, you really should be forecasting the business. You're supposed to be kind of looking forward and helping navigate budgets and helping people, in the business doing growing the business much more than just telling people what already happened and producing pivot tables. And so anyway, I got introduced. This company needed some funding. They came to me and said, Matt, can you produce a pitch deck? Can you work with some of these private equity firms that we've already sourced to kind of present our business? And the more I got talking to them, the more I uncovered some different things that were going on. And one of the things that I uncovered was what I want to talk to you about today, which is that they were already on EOS. They've been on the EOS platform now for, I think it was either 2 or 3 years. And they had a leader from their leadership team in these L10 meetings who became suddenly disengaged. And I don't know if this has ever happened to you before where you've seen this, but I would imagine it does happen from time to time. People are people, and it's tough for them to be perfect for a long period of time. But when they're not completing their weekly to-do items, it becomes this elephant in the room that if it's left unaddressed for too long, the rest of the leadership team probably starts to feel a little bit resentful. And so their scorecard numbers weren't there. If they were even updated at all, another leader had to pull them one day and notice that they weren't going in the right direction. And this person actually missed a few L10 meetings, which is a big no-no in the traction world. And so I'm curious, Raquel, with all of this background, how would you, as a COO hat, you've got that one on, you've also got your integrator hat on. What kinds of questions would you want to know about this company to maybe help them? Because I would guess you've got a multifaceted approach. You've mentioned your graduate degree, your MBA from Texas A&M University. You've got quite the accomplished background, growing this manufacturing company from 6 employees to over 30 in just 18 months. So what would be your approach in working with this Texas-based software development company?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would first start and say, who's holding that person accountable? So is there an integrator in the company? Question.
Yeah, they did have an integrator in the company. Thanks. Yeah, they did have an integrator in the company. It wasn't me at the time.
Yeah.
Like I said, I got introduced as the CFO financial guy that's going to help them create a pitch deck, which is what I did. So I was not the integrator, but I think that might have been one of the problems is their integrator wasn't great at holding people accountable. It was just uncomfortable for them.
Yeah, and I will say to this too, as an integrator who has worked full time in the seat, a lot of times you're holding the integrator seat, but you're also wearing multiple hats of, okay, I'm also, if there's not a director of finance or a director of sales, I may fill in those seats if there's not a director of HR. And so then it becomes hard for the integrator to actually hold anyone accountable because they can't even hold themselves accountable to their job. And so that's why I really believe in everyone having, owning one box in the EOS world. We like to say is owning one box and you own that seat because it really does provide accountability. So to your question is saying, okay, is the integrator sitting in one seat? And if they're not, how do we get them out of that? Or at least taking some off of that? How can we help delegate there?
Yeah, that's really interesting. So if they're wearing more than one hat, they might just be too busy, right? You're thinking that maybe it's hard to kind of get their to-dos done, plus their regular work. plus do other one-on-ones and leading a team, maybe, you know, with some LMA activities. That's, you know, leadership management and, gosh, I can't remember the A. Anyway, LMA is one of the tasks for people who have direct reports. It'll come back to me here in a second. But
Accountability.
the other reason thank you. See, I knew you'd figure it out. Help me out there. So, you know, with this particular company, I do want to kind of get into the details of the other issues that I identified, which was when I was, you know, going through their financials, there were some discrepancies. The team wasn't exactly as cooperative in giving me some of the things that I needed to do my job. But it all comes back in my mind to that accountability word and to their traction, because they were on this program. It was working for a while, but because this one leader fell off, it did seem to kind of slowly unravel. But I'm curious, you know, if you've seen somebody have that happen, and kind of like, do you pull them aside? Do you ask them maybe what's going on in their personal life? Like, how would you kind of approach, you know, dealing with that leader? You kick them off the team? Like, you know, what do you do there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say if I consistently saw that. So one time, I've had it happen before where you have team members. We were a team of, I think it was 7. And you know, one time you forget something or something comes up, great. You put it on the issues list. So in that meeting, if they're not bringing the scorecard meetings, that should be addressed as an issue in the L10 meeting, and saying, hey, what's going on? How can I help you? Is this a bandwidth thing? Is this, I just forgot? Like, really try to understand the why. And I found that this wasn't, when I was a younger leader, when I first started out as an integrator, I felt like I was winging it, and those things didn't come natural to me. It felt like the first thing I wanted to do was like, just go hard on them, you know? And then I realized that you have to be curious with people, and understanding their why behind what they do can help answer questions a lot of the times. So going to that person, and I would say, what seat did they sit in? The ones that were not putting in the scorecard.
Yeah, this person was in charge of sales, and so pretty pivotal part of the company.
Yeah, that's
right?
yeah.
And they were developing software, and so I think his dilemma was he felt like it wasn't totally developed, and so he had a lot of excuses. But I think that if you're in that software world, you understand where your product's at, and you're supposed to understand how to explain that, but still sell. You know, and I just think there was an issue there. He had a lot of excuses.
Yeah. So again, finding out, hey, what's going on? What's the why? And then that I would do in a group setting of, hey, that your scorecard didn't happen. What's going on? And kind of hold them accountable as a group. So accountability, yes, it comes from the integrator having that one-on-one, but accountability shouldn't just end there. Accountability should become part of the team. Like, hey, your peers are holding you accountable. Your peers are saying, hey, I got my stuff in. Like, we need to work as a team to push the company forward and reach our goals. And so if that doesn't work and we're still seeing inconsistency, I would have a one-on-one with them and just get a pulse of, is there something going on personally that's, you know, I've had that happen before where there was some hard life stuff happening for people. And like you mentioned it, people are people, and we all, you know, struggle with things outside of work, and that's okay for us to be human as well. And so understanding, is this something outside of work that's affecting your work? Can somebody take this scorecard for a temporary time while you finish the software? Then we need to delegate that, but we still it's still your responsibility to make sure it's done. If you can't get it done personally, you need to delegate that to a team member or to someone for an X period of time. And then if that still doesn't work, then I would start talking about, do you want this? Do you want to be in this leadership role?
Yeah, that's a tough question. You know, hopefully it sounds like that's
Yeah.
not your first, you know, tool that you would use. So that's really interesting. So yeah, I was taking some notes while you were, you know, kind of going through your thought process here. You know, who is an integrator? You know, understanding their why, and then figuring out, you know, maybe what seat they sit in. Perhaps there's some personal things going on, and I didn't ask this person if there were personal things going on. I don't know. I would guess there are. You know, I think that somebody who is generally pretty consistent and all of a sudden has a drop off, there's more to the story there. But
That's a
you know,
great point, Matt. Like, yeah, that's a great point of if you see somebody who's always consistent and then all of a sudden they just fall off the inconsistency, there's probably something deeper going on there.
Yeah, I mean, not to get too in the weeds, but I think we've all been through something in our life, and for me, I've been through some hard stuff, and my work performance dropped off for a little bit. It was some personal issues I was dealing with, and now that I've kind of got back up and running and got my feet under me, it's back to full speed. So people can grow through that; they can learn some things, but identifying that on the front end and giving them that support, that might be, an area for a company to build some great culture. But what I wanted to make sure before we kind of jump into our next segment, which is where we get to share some cautionary tales if they don't fix this issue with the leadership team. I do just, like I said, kind of want to summarize this particular case study. So we already mentioned it's a Texas-based software development company. They've been on EOS for a few years. They brought me in to try and help them with, creating a pitch deck for these private equity companies and to secure some funding. And what I ended up uncovering was they had an issue in their leadership team. The head of sales not only was missing L10 meetings, which are, you're not supposed to miss them in the traction world. Their scorecard numbers were not awesome either. They were trending in the wrong direction. And I forgot to mention, in the sales seat, there's some very specific numbers on the scorecard that would probably be very common across companies. But I'm curious, Raquel, if you can think about some of the sales numbers that you've seen on scorecards, because for me, the scorecard is really important. It needs to kind of, provide some details about how the company is going to perform in the future, but on the front end. And so that's sales, prospects, presentations, pipeline numbers. Is there more to the scorecard on the sales end of that?
A great question. And I can speak from experience. What you're saying there is, we like to use the term of, we want, leading indications, not lagging. So lagging is great. And a lot of people use lagging numbers to project, but we want leading numbers. So in your scorecard. So some things in sales that I've seen created is, prospects. Okay. If we know the tool of, how do we get what we want? So working backwards. If you need, 5 sales this week or this month, then you work backwards. Okay, how many prospects did I need to get on the call with 50 people? And so that could be a scorecard number. How many people are you talking to? How many touch points? Another is the pipeline projection, right? So you may have a 5 percentile, a 15 percentile, 50 percentile, 75 percentile. So that's something else you might track. How many people do we have in the 75 plus pipeline that's going to move forward? We've sent a contract to or waiting for. So those are some things that you can look at when you're looking at the sales scorecard.
Yeah, great. Thank you for filling in the gaps there. So we've kind of talked about this case study a little bit, just to give people a quick rundown of where we're going from here. We're going to talk about some cautionary tales in our next episode, and so that'll be a chance for you as a full-time integrator and now integrator for multiple companies. A chance to maybe share some stories about situations that maybe didn't get resolved and what happens. And then in our final episode, we'll be able to talk about some solutions. So that's where we get to dive into, specifically what those conversations might look like and how do we really support, this company and this leadership team in getting back to where they should be in full speed and full steam ahead. So, Raquel, thank you so much for your time. I'm really looking forward to our next episode here in just a little bit.